Hi there, hope you're doing really, really well, and welcome to this podcast episode. We have multiple questions in form of comments and emails that we're going to go through, so hope you'll find something that's really helpful to you. And as always, nothing here is a medical advice, just me sharing thoughts and general advice that applies to anyone, and it's up to you, of course, to determine if it's whatever I talk about here is applicable to your situation or not. So that said, let's jump right in here. I think let's start with comments. Actually, let's start with comments on from YouTube here. There are several of those. I think the first one that we want to comment on is from Darren, actually, and here we go. So what happened was Darren made a comment on episode 173 and basically shared that he'd done CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And he had kind of like not had that much progress in the first few weeks here. So I asked him to like contextualize that. And then he did in a comment that we're going to read now. So here we go. This is from 12 hours ago, where Darren wrote the following. So my question to Darren here was like, how are you doing CBTI? Do you have a therapist, or is this self-directed? So this is Darren's reply. I'm working with a psychologist that I found through Dr. Greg Jacobs from Say Goodnight to Insomnia. By the way, I have that book somewhere here. Really good book, by the way. I worked with her in early 2018 for about 3 months. At that time, I'd started waking up early, sometimes 2 to 3 hours early, nearly every day, and having a hard time going back to sleep. CBTI helped. I learned a bunch and got back to sleeping pretty normal. Occasionally, I'd still wake early, but I felt I knew what to do and didn't worry about it when it happened. I'd have an early morning every now and again, but next night was usually fine, so I just kept on doing, no worries. In July, I started having trouble sleeping again. It started with not being able to sleep for 3 to 4 nights. For a couple of weeks, I had trouble getting to sleep 6 nights a week. I was implementing the techniques, getting out of bed, waking up at the same time every day, but it didn't seem to help. So I went back to see the psychologist for some support and to get a fresh look at things. I met her 4 times now in the past month. My trouble has now morphed to a combination where I can't get to sleep, can't stay asleep, waking early. Some nights it's just one of them. Some nights all of them. I've been averaging probably 4 to 5 hours for the past month, which is a blessing. I usually sleep 6 to 6.5 hours when I'm sleeping normally, but I still experience one or all these symptoms every single night. I haven't had what I would call a normal night in several weeks. Okay, sorry to hear this, Darren. And as many of you know, I always try to bring up positive things, and the positive thing is that you're at least sleeping 4 to 5 hours. That's a good thing, and you have a therapist, somebody that's taking care of you and is providing CBTI, which is really, really good. So that said, nothing particularly to comment on here, but let's continue reading, and we'll see if there's something that I can maybe share that's helpful here. So I asked Darren here, what's your sleep window? And for those of you who are not familiar with sleep window, it's when you have trouble sleeping, a really good strategy is to wake up the same time every morning and then actually spend not that much time in bed. Typically something like 6-7 hours is good. So my question to Darren here was like, what is your sleep window? So he said, my sleep window is from 11:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. Although lately I've been going to bed at 12 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. because I've had trouble. And I sleep to my 6 a.m. alarm maybe once a week. Usually I wake up between 4 to 5 a.m. and have trouble dozing back off. So if I have trouble getting to sleep and then I wake up early, a couple nights have been just 3 to 4 hours. Got it. And, I think this is an important question because oftentimes people say, well, I've tried CBT or I'm doing CBTI. And then I ask this question, what are your sleep times? And they say, oh, well, I go to bed at 10 and I get up at 6. Well, that's 8 hours, which is often for most people like too much. So in Darren's case, going to bed not before 11:30 and getting up at 6 sounds very, very reasonable. Okay, so that nothing so far, nothing really to comment on, but I have some of my thoughts actually, but nothing particularly to share here that might be helpful. So let's go on here. Another question I had for Darren. So far, 4 weeks into cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, Have you noticed any improvements? Yes and no. I'm dealing with it better, quote unquote. I'm not as anxious and absorbed with it, but each night is still anxiety producing to some extent because there is no consistency to the problem. One night I can't get to sleep and then sleep till my alarm. The next night I get to sleep fine but wake up 2 to 3 times and then wake up an hour before my alarm. Then the next night I go to bed and I'm asleep in 5 minutes but wake up 2 hours early and can't get back to sleep. Or it could be all those in one night. So at this stage, I'm just frustrated because I'm very consistent with getting out of bed when I'm supposed to and never nap. I work all day, exercise nearly every day, etc. I've been working on my negative thinking, which is a struggle at times because I feel like I'm doing everything right, but still don't feel like I can find any consistency with what I'm experiencing night to night. I just keep telling myself it will get better like it did last time and try to keep myself distracted as much as possible. I watch videos on your channel for inspiration and motivation to stick with it, but to say I feel like things are really working right now, I don't know. Each night is just a new adventure and I'm tired of the adventure. The good news is that I'm rarely tired during the day. If anything, I feel a bit wired, anxiety or hyperarousal, I assume. Sorry to go on for so long, but you know, I'm very happy you shared this this response, or, you know, shared all this with us, Darren. It's super helpful. And as I was reading this, a couple of things came to my mind. Number one, I think I've shared this a few times. Not like I think Darren, you're the third person who tells me that they had trouble sleeping. They did cognitive behavioral therapy at some point, got better, trying it again, and as you know, a lot of you guys know, I'm a huge believer in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Here's the thing. With many other things, once you've done something one time and then, you know, it's helped and then you do it a second time, it's not really the same because there's like a little bit of that expectation that it's gonna help now. Like it helped last time, maybe it's gonna help this time too, or maybe you anticipate it's gonna help this time too, which makes it that anticipation, expectation when it comes to sleep always a little bit tricky. So that's just kind of like a big picture thing for everybody else who's like tried cognitive behavioral therapy insomnia and it's helped and they're kind of doing it the second time, may actually not be as effective second time around because you just have that expectation, anticipation that it's gonna, like, same thing's gonna happen as the last time. So that's kind of just a big picture comment. And now you mentioned here a good positive is that I actually don't feel tired. I feel wired, if anything. Anxiety or hyperarousal, I assume, sounds very much like it. But first of all, you know, bringing out something that's positive is huge. Like, you know, whenever somebody shares with me that they're trying to be positive or they bring out some positive, I really feel good about that. Insomnia is so difficult to get past that it's really truly so helpful to be positive because if we find things that are positive they can become like stepping stones. Like this little thing can give you like confidence that moves you forward. So just very happy that you brought that up here, Darren. I think that's super encouraging. Now I know I haven't shared anything that's particularly practically helpful here, but I have at least two things let me start with I think is like what I think is the most important one. Let me say two things. One is that 4 weeks in, I see most people that do CBTI for the first time typically experience like some help, some positive signs within the first 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. But there are a lot of people who don't. There are a lot of people who go into like week 5, week 6 before things start turning around. So, one thing to keep in mind there. Now, second thing, I think this is more important, is the way I see it is that the first part of using cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is really kind of educational, and the behavioral component is very cut and dry. It's like, you're learning about, quote unquote normal sleep, that most people sleep about 6 hours or a little bit more than 6 hours. So you learn that sleeping less than that has not been shown to have any negative health consequences. You learn about sleep drive, that the only thing that can make you sleep is your own body's need to sleep and things of that nature. And then you do this like get up at the same time and don't spend too much time in bed. That's kind of the cut and dry first part of CBTI. Now, once somebody understands that as in implementing that, and then the next part becomes like almost the opposite. It becomes like shifting focus away from sleep. It becomes being distracted, being active, doing things you like, things that you enjoy, and like shifting focus away from sleep. And I guess the irony here becomes that the first comment from Darren was on my video about like taking a sleep detox, like just picking like a week or 2 weeks where you like completely shift focus away from sleep. Like, don't read about it, don't maybe if you're doing a sleep log, like don't even sleep log, just get up early and still don't go to bed too early, but otherwise shift attention away from. So that really ironically is probably the thought that I thought maybe most helpful for you, Darren, or somebody like yourself, Darren, that maybe that would really be the thing to do here. I felt there was one more thing I wanted to comment on, but I really think that's the most helpful one. So thanks so much for sharing this, Darren. I wish I had something more that was maybe a little bit more practical here, but if you have any follow-up questions to this, Darren, please post it. But again, you might actually not want to do that. Maybe the best thing for you is to do this like sleep detox that you initially thought was a good idea for you. So we'll finish that there with that comment. And thanks so much for sharing this, Darren. Okay, so from 1 day ago, we have a comment from somebody named MFF, and this is a comment to episode Insomnia Insight number 244, which, by the way, I thought became a really good one. So if you have not seen Insomnia Insight number 244, do check that out. So let's read this comment. Hey Daniel, I had sleep anxiety and I've overcome it, and I don't fret about sleep anymore. My doctor prescribed me anti-anxiety pills and a mild sleeping pill. They always work. However, last night I was extremely sleepy, but I couldn't sleep until 8 a.m. and woke up 12 noon. But during the time I couldn't sleep, I wasn't anxious as I normally am, just irritated. I also didn't want to get out of bed because I was so tired. Admittedly, I did get a little anxious when I felt like time was flying by and I wasn't sleeping, but we wasn't nearly as anxious as I get normally. What do I do to overcome this weird situation? I have uni. I'm starting university in 3 days, and I'll have to get up at 8 a.m. I can't fathom not sleeping or staying up the whole night since my commute is so long and university is exhausting in a bad way. I was doing so well until this. Previously, I also had a night where it was 5 a.m. and I couldn't sleep, but fell asleep quickly. Okay. So first of all, MFF, thanks so much for this comment. And as I say quite a lot, like comments are so helpful. They really bring life to this channel. That said, sorry this has been happening, but I think there are several things to say. One thing is the following. I think trying to like point out things that are positive here is that in your case, you kind of identified what the trigger is. Seems like you're starting university and that's somewhat anxiety provoking, and that's most likely the reason that you don't sleep, which is always better than when somebody has no clue at all why they can't sleep. They're kind of looking towards like very exotic reasons for not being able to sleep. So that's always a positive. That said, that doesn't necessarily help you, but I think it's good that you have that insight. Now, so I think one thing I want to comment on was like this situation where you don't sleep at all an entire night, and it's just like you don't feel particularly anxious. It seems bizarre. It's like, why am I not sleeping? I don't feel. I think for most of the time when that happens, it is hyperarousal that is the culprit. And what is hyperarousal? Well, the way I see it is like hyperarousal is kind of like one step below worrying and like maybe 2 steps below frank anxiety. It's it's the feeling that maybe it can be triggered by positive things or quote unquote negative things, meaning a kid the night before Christmas, for example, they're not anxious or worried, but they're a little bit hyper aroused. They're kind of thinking about something that's going to happen. They're anticipating something and they can't sleep. It could be like we have an exam tomorrow or something going on tomorrow. We don't feel anxious about it, but at a subconscious level, it is like that hyper alertness, hyper arousal is present. And even though we're not conscious of it, it is there. And that's typically what happens when people are like, it's bizarre. I normally sleep. I can't sleep. I don't feel anxious, but that is typically hyperarousal. Now, so when you have this type of like anticipatory insomnia, meaning we have a good idea of why we can't sleep, it's something that's going to happen in the next day or next few days, then what should we do about that? Well, I think a really good strategy is to look backwards, look in the past. And if I don't know, it sounds like you have been to university before, and if that's the case, if somebody has gone to university before and now is kind of going back, then looking back at like what was it like before or in the past, was there previously a night where I couldn't sleep and then I had something important to do the following day, and how did I function that day? And if you can find evidence that, you know, there was that time where I had like a really important day and I slept very little the night before and I actually did okay, that's really important. That's really, really something to hang on to and play up and remind yourself of, because if you know that you can do pretty well, even if you barely slept, then you're less fearful of not sleep, and that can be really helpful. And another maybe more practical thing is, I totally get what you're saying here. You stayed in bed for a very long time because you were so tired. I think the way I think about it is this: that if you can't, you know, if you're in bed and you've been awake for a long time without falling asleep, and you feel pretty like comfortable, relaxed, and doesn't bother you, then it's okay to stay in bed. But if you're frustrated, it's generally better to get out of bed and do something different. And that can be something that should be something that's distracting and kind of enjoyable, entertaining. If not, like, what the point of that is not to make yourself sleep or make yourself sleepy. In my opinion, it's not like keeping it really dark and doing something boring, because that often backfires. Whenever we try to make ourselves sleep, that, you know, we actually become more alert. So doing something that's enjoyable, taking mind off whatever's causing sleep is good. I think that could really help in a situation like this. Like, I think that could have really helped you, MFF, if you had gotten out of bed and got kind of distracted. You may have been able to fall asleep that night. But I think here is actually probably the most important kind of takeaway, the most important thought here, which is the following. I had sleep anxiety and overcome it, is kind of the first lines, and I don't fret about it anymore. That's super, super good, you know, and that's also something to hold on to. Like, you've had a sleep anxiety in the past and you got over it. And the reason I think that's so important is because if what's happening now seems to be a couple of isolated events. And as I talk a lot about here is how insomnia develops. For most, what happens is that you have this 1, 2, 3 sleepless nights, and then you identify that as a problem and you start trying to make yourself sleep. Like, you try the melatonin, you try the sleep hygiene, and the more you try, the more anxious you become because nothing is working, and then the less you sleep, and the more you try, etc. So probably the most important thing I have to say here is try not to react too much to this. Try not to react too much to this. I think that's really the key thing here. Very, very likely you are going to start university and you can kind of fall into rhythm and you know, sleep is going to, going to go back to your typical pattern of sleep if you don't react too much to it. If you go down that route of like, I'm going to try to do this, do that, etc., then it's going to be more ingrained. So I guess in summary here, like still trying to get up at the same time is good. I know you slept, I mean, obviously you didn't sleep at all until 8 a.m. so it's understandable that you need to sleep a little bit, but generally speaking, it's good to get up at the same time every morning for most of us, and particularly if you have trouble sleeping. And then try not to react to these sleepless nights too much, and then try to find evidence that in the past, even if you haven't slept, you were able to function, at least go through your day. I think those are kind of like the main ones here for you MFF. So hope that's helpful. I hope university goes really well, and stay in touch. Cool. Jessica saw a reply, but then I don't know what happened to it. But Jessica, if you have any questions, please post them. And then we have this. We have a quick comment from Christina Ruiz on cognitive behavioral for therapy. I'm sorry, the deep dive, where she just said sleep hygiene made her actually more anxious and put more pressure on her. And I just shared a comment there where I agree with that. Like, oftentimes when people try to keep things dark, keep it cool, that doesn't actually help for people that have significant insomnia. So just that one. And then I think this is the final comment that we're gonna talk about today, which is actually it's kind of a conversation here between Qwerty Qaz and digital ministry. And this is these are comments on episode pod number 16, which is called Sleep Maintenance Insomnia. So let's see here. Okay, so 21 hours ago, Qwerty Qaz said, and by the way, there was a discussion in the comments between myself and Digital Mystery, who basically said there's more to insomnia. There's a lot, but one of the things were like there's more to insomnia than just like hyperarousal and preoccupation and things like that. There could be physiological things, like there could truly be like elevated cortisol levels, for example, that are triggering the insomnia. So in light of that, Qwerty Qaz said 21 hours ago, yes, cortisol increasing too soon sounds likely. This isn't psychological, it's physiological. And then in a different one, same issue, fall asleep quickly, easily and soundly, then 5 hours later wake up, no worrying, no stress symptoms. Given unlimited time, I can go back to sleep a couple hours later. On work days, there is no time for that. Someone needs to work on the sleep maintenance issue as a separate form from other kinds of insomnia. It's more common than anyone seems to want to recognize. It often occurs with aging. I think, it's rare that I talk about sleep maintenance insomnia, and or for that matter, like sleep initiation insomnia. And to me, sleep maintenance insomnia simply means somebody that can fall asleep without problems, but then has fragmented sleep, wakes up a lot after that. And the reason I don't talk much about sleep maintenance insomnia or sleep initiation insomnia is that most people have both. Most people have both trouble falling asleep initially and trouble falling back asleep after waking up in the middle of the night. And so that may be why, I myself or others don't really talk so much about sleep maintenance insomnia. And I'm trying to be very respectful of everybody's opinion, and Qwerty Qaz or Digital Mystery, I don't know either of you very much. I've just interacted with a little bit here with through the comments here, but that said, in my opinion, I truly believe that almost all insomnia has the same root cause, and that's that hyperarousal. And I believe that applies to sleep maintenance insomnia as well. And if you mentioned it occurs more often with aging, yeah, totally agree with that. Like, as we know that kids typically have very nice consolidated sleep versus as we become older, we tend to have more fragmented sleep. Yeah, that definitely occurs with aging. But there's more I want to say here, but I want to read another comment on Qwerty Qaz's comment, which is from Digital Mystery from 14 hours ago. And Digital Mystery said, bingo, my friend, bingo, bingo, bingo. This is my number one gripe against the medical community in treating insomnia. It is a statistical fact that as people age, they tend to begin to experience sleep maintenance issues at a far higher rate than younger folks. 100% agree with that. Exactly. This is data. But sleep physicians do not treat it that way. They put everyone in the same pot and always approach this as if it could be treated with behavioral changes. Dr. Julia Ross, author of Mood Cure and Diet Cure, is one of the few that actually treat the matter of chronically elevated cortisol. Yes, this is where the cortisol came in again. If you think about it, who would be the folks most likely to suffer from chronically elevated cortisol? The name itself tells you that it is a condition that develops over time. Years of stress eventually leads to your adrenals making the adaptation of continually producing the hormone at a higher level. Hence the common phrase, it is like your adrenals are stuck in the on position. There's more about kind of the physiology here from Digital Mystery. I just wanted to comment on one site. I appreciate your feedback because I suspect that the sorry, you're just gonna close one thing. I suspect that the success rate of CBTI is grossly overreported. I've seen studies where it's put at 40 to 60%. And there was some more thing I really wanted to comment on. I'm gonna go back here. Where was it? Okay, let me just kind of read a little bit more here. Years of stress, hence the common phrase. Dr. Julia Ross, I've tried this. I've read this book. I appreciate your feedback. I found a report. I suspect most studies probably, let's say, for example, if you have, I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of babbling here, but from a personal standpoint, it's difficult to exploit actual facts in some aspects. Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, comment on the success rate here with of CBTI. Yeah, I usually say 70% because, that's typically what we hear from studies. But what does that really mean? I think, in my experience, it's when somebody kind of commits to CBTI and goes through a full course, then I do believe that somewhere around 70% do report feeling better. But then the question becomes, those people who didn't follow through, was that because they weren't quote unquote committed, or was it because like CBTI was never actually gonna work for them? So that makes that number that makes it hard to really have a true number, if you will. But what I was gonna say here was about the cortisol was my thought and my belief is that cortisol is more the egg, not the chicken. That was that didn't come out the right way. I believe that the cortisol is more an effect rather than the cause. I believe that it is the hyperarousal, kind of the mind and kind of turbo mode, that the general stress that is increasing cortisol levels, rather than like baseline high cortisol levels that is causing insomnia. Now, here's the thing. Here's what I want to talk about was it's hard. Like, nobody can claim to have to know the truth fully. Like, we all have more like theories and thoughts and beliefs, right? And here's the thing, like, if your belief, or let me put it this way, it can often be helpful to question one's own beliefs. And like, is this a good belief for me to have or not? Is this belief helpful for me or not? And in the light of insomnia and high cortisol levels, I think this is important. It's important to ask oneself, is it helpful for me to believe that my insomnia is caused by high cortisol levels? Where does that take me? Well, that takes me to a place where I'm looking for something to like lower my cortisol levels so that I can sleep better. And what is that? You know, it's hard. It's hard. Like, you almost end up in a dead end. I don't know of any treatment or pathway towards like lowering cortisol levels to sleep better. You know, versus saying, maybe, what if my cortisol levels are elevated because of my insomnia? Well, then the pathway becomes, well, let's try cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or mindfulness-based therapy, or ACT, or something else that can help, and see what happens. If you find that you end up sleeping better and that your cortisol levels go down, well, then maybe it was, maybe it was the hyperarousal that caused the increased cortisol level. So my thinking here is exploring one's own beliefs can be really helpful, and kind of asking oneself, is this a good belief for me to have or not? You know, is it a helpful belief for me to have or not? And then I guess, just in fairness, if I do that to myself and say, I believe that insomnia is the cause for high cortisol levels, is that a helpful belief for me to have? Well, it supports everything I do, right? So I'm kind of biased, and it's quote unquote better for me to have that belief. But that said, I don't think in my personal situation that belief is, has any negative consequences. So I think it's a good belief for me to have. So I just did that to be like, in fairness to everyone. Okay, great. So let's take a look at another couple of emails here, actually. The first one would be this one. Where is it? Here, actually. And this is from Isabel, who I made she shared something that I made a episode reply to, and she wrote me a follow-up to that. Which was it? This one or this one? Sorry, I'm reading through my emails here. It's gonna be there it is, I think. Okay. Hello, Daniel. I watched your show, and the insomnia tips have been very helpful. At least I feel like I have hope in my battle against insomnia. I'm sorry. I feel like this is an older one. I'm just going to go back one step here to my inbox. And then here. And then that was 2 days ago, and this was 12 hours ago. Here it is. Okay. Cool. So sorry about that. Here's the email I should have been reading from the beginning. So from Isabel here. Thanks, Daniel, for the answers in the audio. Your answers reflect the reality of my journey. I think I'm moving on from the anxiety of paying so much attention to the insomnia. And now, even with a couple of hard sleep nights like the last few, I'll look forward to a new day despite of the previous nights filling up my day with activities. However, I'm still in the process of getting better and leaving insomnia days behind. And since you specialized in insomnia, I really want to ask you if you see normal that I'm still missing nights of sleep after 5 weeks of being in the sleep restriction therapy, or by now I should have a more consistent result or complete recovery. What is there aside from sleep restriction to cure insomnia? Very, very good questions. I want to say this, that I actually read this in one of the books by Sasha Stevens. Maybe I think it was actually this one, bedtime stories for insomniacs. Yep, really good book. As I think all Sasha Stevens books are really good. But so what she writes in this book is the following. She says that if you are wondering when you're gonna sleep well again, well, then that's the reason you don't. So her point is like, if you kind of are questioning or wondering, when am I going to get better? Then the sooner you stop asking that question, the sooner you're going to get better. It sounds a little crass, but as always, I'm just sharing things because I really think they're helpful. So in light of that, of course you're wondering, like, when am I going to actually sleep well? When am I going to be past my insomnia, right? And I think the key here, the most important thing here is maybe not look so much at kind of the absolute numbers of hours or how you're feeling so much today or things like that, but rather the trend. Meaning, if you are 5 weeks into trying to spend less time in bed or doing bedtime restriction, and you are noticing that you're seeing some helpful things happening, like you're feeling a little bit better as things are going along, then just have patience. And actually, I do agree with Sasha Stevens, like, try not to question when you're gonna sleep really well, or try not to question so much like, am I doing this right? Because that just draws attention like to the trouble sleeping. And just set it and forget it. Like, do your bedtime restriction, stay busy during the day, and just kind of like move forward. I think that's the best strategy. And by the way, some people notice like a lot of improvement in 2 weeks. That definitely happens. Other people, no improvement at all in like 5 weeks. So as long as you're seeing like things are getting better, I feel that's, something to really hold on to and just kind of keep moving forward and not question so much not having so much like strict goals like, but is this normal? Should I be here by this time, etc. As long as things are getting better, just kind of keep moving forward. I think that's really, really good. Now, what is there aside from sleep restriction to cure insomnia? Sleep restriction is one important technique. But as I've kind of already pointed out a little bit earlier here in this podcast episode, even more important than learning about insomnia, even more important than doing like bedtime restriction, stimulus control, and those techniques, I think this is attention shifting and behavioral activation. Really, just things that you enjoy during the day, hobbies, activities, things that involve meeting other people are super, super helpful. Anything that shifts attention away from trouble sleeping is really, really good. I think that is really, really good. All right, let's keep reading here. Like I said in my last email, I can't really recall if I sleep or how much I sleep during the night. I just go by how I feel in the morning some days. Even with little sleep based on my perception, I still feel fine. Other days, like today, not so much. This morning, something peculiar happened as I was finishing my sleep window at 5:30 a.m. I was entering in my normal way to sleep before, where I felt like a story had been played in my head, and I felt like properly getting into sleep as I know it. Was finally feeling that my onset insomnia was about to give up as I was entering into sleep again. I do regret how my alarm went on 30 minutes into this, and I get completely awoken again. Well, here's another one, which is, whenever something kind of strange happens that is like unusual and it's related to sleep, best thing to do, just kind of be like, that was odd, I had a hiccup, but don't pay much attention to it. Because when it's a negative, like when it's something, for example, something that a lot of people share is that when they're just about to fall asleep, they're like, oh, they have a body jerk or a twitch or something like that. And those things are related to hyperarousal. And if one reacts to them and one starts really worrying about it and thinking about it, then you typically have more of them. So like when some bizarre, unusual things happen, the best thing to do typically is not pay much attention to them. Now, you said here, what you said? I regret how my alarm went on 30 minutes into this and I got completely woken again. Well, maybe that wasn't a bad thing, because if you had overslept, then you could have gone on to sleep for several hours, and then you wouldn't be able to fall asleep the following night, etc. So if I understand this correctly, I feel like you're saying like, I wish I could have gotten like some really good quality sleep there. Maybe you could have, but that may have sabotaged the overall efforts, so just want to comment on that. All right, so it's been 2 months of onset insomnia, and now I'm at a full month of sleep restriction therapy without feeling a true sleep call like today, and now felt that a little sleep call. I was wondering whether it will come back within my sleep. Okay, yeah, exactly. I totally see where you're going here. You're basically sharing that it was the first time I really felt like a need to sleep, like a sleep call, and then I had the alarm going. Honestly, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking that this is a really, really good thing. The fact that you felt like I really felt sleepy. That's something people typically report in the first few weeks of CBTI as kind of surprise. Like, I haven't felt that in weeks. I haven't felt like truly sleepy in weeks, and that's a good sign. That means like you are doing like your bedtime restriction. That means you are, your sleep drive is working. Your body is, getting towards a point where it needs more sleep, and kind of, the basic physiology is there, etc. So, and again, something super important with insomnia is like the more you want sleep, the more you feel like you need sleep, you're praying for sleep, hoping for sleep, that stuff makes it hard. That puts so much pressure on you to sleep, and it builds up this like expectations and things like that. So just keep that in mind, that the more you want sleep, the trickier, the harder it becomes to get it. So it may not have been a bad thing at all that your alarm went off there. Maybe it was really good. Okay. And by the way, you're asking, I wonder if this will come back within my sleep window. Wondering, thinking about it, questioning it is generally not good. Like, try not to think about it at all. That's the best thing. But that said, it's happened once. It probably will happen again. And the less you wonder, the more likely it will happen again. So yeah, this is a comment there. Now, Daniel, can someone survive for so long without significant sleep? My therapist says the brain has a way to reset the lost hours, and the brain is not going to let you shut down. What are your thoughts on that? I believe in the sleep restriction. Okay, so let's just comment on that first. How long can someone survive for without significant sleep? Well, the way I understand it, in my understanding of this, is the following: that we have this thing called I call it core sleep, and there are different ways of thinking about core sleep, but the way I think about it is like core sleep is kind of the minimum amount of sleep that you can sustain on indefinitely, like for months, and that number is somewhere around 4 hours. So somebody can actually kind of muddle through week after week, month after month on about 4 hours of sleep. And now, if you go below that, if you go on average like 3 hours of sleep, 3 hours and 20 minutes of sleep, then there will be a shutdown, but there will be like the need to sleep is going to be so strong that you basically are not going to be able to sustain wakefulness. There are going to be times where you just have to sleep. So that's the way I think about that. So nobody, I don't think. And now another question, kind of it's not directly what's asked here, but kind of an implied question is, what's going to happen if I don't get to sleep for a long time? Can that hurt my body? That has never been shown. Strange as it sounds, that has not been shown. And so what happens is, after a long period of time with very, very little sleep, that sleep drive, the body's need to sleep becomes so strong that you just sleep. And by the way, for you, if you're on Facebook Live here, I have 10% left, so we might get cut off here, but we hopefully not. So we could continue reading here. I believe in the sleep restriction and CBTI for insomnia because prior to that, I was even worse. This is great to hear. You have seen progress there. That's amazing. I couldn't even feel sleepy at all. In your previous answer to my last email, you mentioned that for some people, even 3 weeks of insomnia could take a few months to repair with the therapy. It eventually will. Have you seen cases often like that? Yeah, absolutely. I want to say this. I think this is really the most important thing. Of all the people I've interacted with here in the YouTube channel or that I've seen in clinic, of those people that like never gave up, they just kept going, kept seeing me back in clinic, everybody did well. Like nobody. That said, like nobody. There are a lot of people who after I saw them for 3 months, and they were like, they may not have been like, yay, I sleep amazing now. I sleep like 8 hours per night, and I am super, super refreshed. Maybe not that, but everyone, the response becomes from like that really, really great response to some people that are like, I'm not a great sleeper, but I am not worried about my sleep and I function well. So I would say anybody that has not given up has reached, some point of like real significant improvement for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. It is hard to maintain the restriction when my body really wants to take a nap off the sleep window hours. Also, I start getting super sleepy watching a movie at 10 p.m. in the evening, but my window starts at 12 a.m. and I have to wait and keep myself awake for that long. I miss my sleep wave and it's so hard to get back. In fact, when I get back at 12 a.m., no sleep comes, and I go back and forth every 20 minutes. What do you think of taking naps while doing sleep restriction? I have a couple of thoughts here. And of course, you have a therapist, so definitely talk to that person. They know you, etc. But generally, and this question comes up a lot, what if somebody is like, my sleep window starts at 12, meaning I shouldn't go to bed before midnight, but I feel really, really sleepy at 10 or 11. A good strategy, in my opinion, is one that I learned from Michael Schwartz, which is maybe, if your sleep window starts at midnight, then maybe at 11 p.m., stop watching the clock. Stop watching the clock and just go by how you feel. If you feel sleepy, go to bed. If you feel alert, then stay up and like just avoid watching the clock. That I feel that that's a good way to kind of phase out of the sleep restriction. It's kind of a step towards doing what most people do, just going by how they feel. So that's something to consider. Taking naps while doing sleep restriction. Generally, I'm kind of one of those who says try to avoid it. But if you kind of have to take a nap, I say to my patients in clinic, then maybe take a 20-minute power nap, but not more than that. And then more, especially when one has missed the sleep window and no sleep came for days, I'm still wondering whether I should restrict more times since I'm only sleeping 2 to 3 hours. My window is 6 hours. However, I really think maybe I'm not doing the sleep restriction good enough. What are your thoughts? This what you're asking here is exactly one of those questions that Sasha Stevens talks about in her book. It's like, am I doing it right? And then she says in her book, like, if you're asking if you're doing it right, you're not, because you're asking if you're doing it right. And that might sound like just like semantics, but I really believe in it, because the more we question whether we're getting everything right, am I doing the better restriction right? Am I doing sleep restriction right? Should I be doing more of this? Should I be doing less than that? That all brings attention. So I think really the best thing is like set it and forget it. Decide upon a sleep window and then try not to question it. Try to focus your attention on the positives you get, and focus on like things you do outside of like at work, or like things you do with your family, things you do like focus on that, and that's really the best thing in my humble opinion. Super thankful for this, Isabel, and follow-up questions, please let me know. And I think we can actually fit everything in here. This is cool. So this is going to be the last one here, which is a question here from no. Oh yeah, we'll see. Actually, there's actually one more that I forgot about. This is from Amanda, who has contributed several times in the past. And let's go. Let's read this. Hi Daniel, it's me again. An update. I'm so sad and afraid CBTI may not work for me. It's the 3rd month and I don't feel any considerable change. I mean, I'm missing my classes so much because I'm tired. I can't study because I'm too tired. But when I lay in bed, I only can sleep after midnight. And even that way, I have trouble sleeping. The last 2 weeks were exhausting. I had like 3 to 4 hours of sleep, even taking mirtazapine. I take mirtazapine since 2016, 30 milligrams. If I don't take it, I have 0 sleep. Last night, I was so done that all I could feel was that I was going to pass out. So I took mirtazapine plus Klonopin. I slept for almost 8 hours, feeling so sedated, but it's better than what I was feeling before. Anyway, I'm starting to think that there's something wrong with me. I just can't be like that for more weeks. I have my university life. I'm not living. I went to another psychiatrist to try transcranial magnetic stimulation, not to take any sleeping pills, but he said that I have a complex problem for not sleeping for so long and prescribed ketapine 300 milligrams, which is a high dose, but I'm afraid to take this and it'd be like lithium. Lithium with mirtazapine helped me the most of days, but just for 1.5 months. Then I had to increase the dose until I got to the higher dose, and even that way stopped working after 1.5 months. I don't consider myself a depressed person anymore. I'm quite positive, but of course I get depressed because of my insomnia. Who doesn't? I don't know what to do. Wish I could go to your clinic. There's no sleep physician in my city. Yeah, I sorry, of course, to hear this, Amanda, but thanks for reaching out. And I want to say this. First of all, particularly when it comes to like medications and and those type of things. Of course, you have to talk to like the prescribing person to ask if it's appropriate to take this dose or higher, lower, etc. But I have this like a couple like big picture things that may be helpful to you, and one is first of all, a lot of people are wonders if CBTI will work for them, and as I said just recently, like in my opinion, anybody who kind of commits to it and does it and sticks with it will do better. That's been my experience, and a reason a lot of times we wonder if something's going to work. I mean, at some level, that's completely natural. It's kind of a waste of time and effort to do something that may not help us. So it's kind of a natural thing to question if something is going to work or not. But that becomes a problem when so much hinges upon belief. Like if you don't believe something's going to work, then something like this, like CBTI, that really kind of, it makes it a little bit less likely for it to work. So I feel like, you know, having some belief commitment is good, you know, and to kind of give somebody that, I want to share again that in my opinion, in my experience, people that commit to it and really do it always end up doing better. So I hope that's helpful. Secondly, you know, insomnia can sometimes be complex in a sense that somebody has like maybe a lot of pain and they have sleep apnea and they have a lot of stress and anxiety. It's complex in a sense that there are many things that contribute to it, but at the base of it, it's really always, in my opinion, again related to like hyperarousal, like either frank anxiety, either you really know you're anxious, you're worried, or you just feel like, or you have that kind of extra energy and you just have hyperarousal. I think the important thing is like the more we think of insomnia as something like really bizarre, unusual, strange, that leads us to that place of thinking, I'm really different. Something is really different with me. I have to find something, some unusual treatment for it, and I'm going to look for that and try to find it. And that, in my opinion, typically leads to like the rabbit hole where you just look for things, nothing works, you become more anxious, more stressed, nothing works, etc. When we start thinking of like, you know what, my insomnia is actually pretty similar to this other person's insomnia and other people I hear about, which means that what works for them is probably going to work for me. So that, just something to share there. And what I read from these two emails is a lot of, you know, you get the sense that the person that's writing this to me is kind of trying a lot of things, like maybe trying this, tweaking this, trying this other thing, maybe trying that, and that oftentimes is not really helpful, particularly if somebody's like, well, let me put it this way, set it and forget it is really good. When trying to get past insomnia, it's like the questioning, like, should I do that? What if this happens? How about if I do this? What if that doesn't work? That is really destructive. That never helps. When I think it's really helpful for insomnia when things are like cut and dry, like, okay, I'm taking these medications. Well, I'm going to take them as prescribed this time, every single night. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to do it. And the same thing with sleep times. I'm going to get up this time. I'm not going to question it, and etc. When there's a lot of shifting, then that's usually not helpful. And like trying different things, trying this, trying that typically is not helpful. So, by the way, I wish there was a sleep physician in your city too, Amanda. But yeah, hope you found this helpful, and keep in touch. Let me know if you have further questions. More than happy to make another reply. And now, this is going to be the last one, and this is from John from Canada. And let's see, the first one was from here, and oh yeah, here it is. And this is an email I got, but it's regarding episode 244, which, by the way, I think I already said this. I think that turned out to be a really good one. Definitely check in on episode Insomnia Insight number 244 if you haven't watched that. Good morning. Your analogy of sleep issues from last night was 100%, even more 100% spot on. Thanks so much, John. The more attention, even any attention, is what keeps it going. You have to really not think about it at all, and you will reap rewards. I listened to an audiobook a couple of days before by Guy Meadows' sleep book, and he goes into the same analogy. He has some reasoning behind his theory regarding CBTI of why he doesn't agree with the CBTI theories, but at the same time, the theory behind his is somewhat the same, if that makes sense. Yeah, I totally agree with this. Like ACT or the Guy Meadows, and I have that book too somewhere here. Actually, here it is. The sleep book. You know, he also says in his book that, you know, you should try kind of having the outside perspective on your thoughts, don't engage with your thoughts, etc. But then he also says, if it doesn't work, maybe try spending a little less time in bed, which is like classic CBTI. So I think we all kind of use the same techniques, really. Okay, one thing is you have to carry on with your daily things and not think about anything regarding your sleep or rest, just like everyone does prior to having some troubles. In the end, you will move past it or dissolve it. The words of smashing it or conquering it are probably not words to use either. Use more kind words like, yeah, agree totally with you. So I think no question here, really, John. I think just thank for the support, but I think there was some questions here. Here we go, from 8 hours ago. I appreciate you going on the podcast tonight as well. I had a question regarding getting over sleep issues. Now, I've listened to your podcast as well as others regarding finally getting over sleep-related issues and moving past insomnia. Sometimes you can have setbacks, which can obviously give you some sleep troubles for either a day or a few days, or who knows, maybe a week or so. Now, is this the way you're talking to yourself, or bad habits, maybe not following a good schedule, that does this? I know when people start to have bad sleep habits or patterns, it's usually a stressful event or worry or something. Even as jet lag can spark some trouble. It just seems with specialists in the CBTA talk about setbacks, they refer to not following the program, something like that. Now, is the person who's just getting over or moving past their issues more susceptible than others? Or is it generally wholehearted the way people talk to themselves that sets them up? And there's some more, but I want to comment on this right now. So I don't think it's so much that it's like let me put it this way. When somebody that does not have any trouble sleeping, never had insomnia, never had problem sleeping, their sleep confidence is like 100%. They know that they're going to sleep. They don't question it. They just go to bed and out they go, right? And so if that person has like an off night or like something is off with their sleep, they kind of shrug it off, and then the next night their sleep confidence is unshaken. They go back to sleep again. If you have insomnia or have had insomnia, you are vulnerable, particularly if you're kind of like just starting to treat your insomnia, you're kind of just getting better. So in that vulnerable state, anything can trigger more insomnia. So that's why you are more likely to have quote unquote setbacks. Now, what is it that triggers that? Well, again, it could be like the anything thing. It could be yes, things that you're telling yourself like you're getting better, but then you tell yourself, oh, this is not real. I'm going to have insomnia again. I'm going to have trouble sleeping again. That could set it off. Or it could be like an external thing, like there was a really loud noise outside, and that then woke it up, and then you're in a vulnerable state, and your insomnia kicks back in again. I guess the important thing here is that almost everybody has these setbacks where you're doing better and then you do worse again. And the important thing is like actually not to try to figure it out, like not try to find out why you had that setback, but just kind of keep moving forward. And that's the important thing. Yep. But you're right. The person who's getting over or moving past their insomnia are more susceptible. They're more vulnerable. Absolutely. Now, is there a time limit when you not even think about it, the way you actually get past this, plus obviously keeping to a schedule like most people in life do? I know normal sleepers don't even think about a particular reason because they just naturally adjust. You're absolutely right there. So is there a schedule? Is there a time limit? I don't know if I got this question 100% right here, John, but the way I think about it is like it's all related to sleep confidence, meaning if somebody is kind of treating their insomnia and they still have like poor sleep confidence to kind of just getting over it, then it's good to kind of stick with your sleep window and be kind of rigid about it. But when your sleep confidence improves, then the less you're worried about your sleep, the less you can just kind of completely relax and do whatever you want to do. Okay. And then you said something about, I know normal sleepers don't even think about particular reasons. They just naturally adjust. Yep. This is why worrying about it, Googling it, revolving around keeps it fresh. Yep, exactly. The trick is not to care one bit to break this bad habit. This question makes sense. Yes, it does. I think it's a great question for people who are moving past or even starting to give them positive outlook. Myself, I've been making leaps and bounds. Listen to that. That's awesome. John has been made leaps and bounds. Super excited to hear that. That's awesome. I believe 100% in the way we talk to ourselves or habits that we keep. Completely let go. Believe in yourself and reap the rewards. This is such a great end to this episode. Such a great end, John. Super happy that you're doing better. And that said, we shall conclude this episode, and I want to thank everyone who has left comments, emailed me, and I shall be back with more tomorrow. And until then, hope you have a really good day, night, morning, or whatever time it is in your time zone. Okay, bye now.